What is going on, YouTube? So, uh, uh, rough going live late here, but I wanted to continue my conversation here, kind of something to go off of here for a bit of a YouTube series, but kind of talk more about conference expansion around the college football landscape. I want to talk about a conference today that is honestly one of the more narrow conversations, just because pretty much no matter what, the Big Ten's going to have a tough time expanding. The Big Ten has the most narrow criteria of who they want to pick to expand, just with the AAU label. I believe at the moment, I did some research into it, just basic research, nothing too deep, into the AAU, 66 universities involved. And with 66 universities total, having kind of that academic label of prestige, it's going to be hard for Ohio State to find the quote unquote right culture fit. Sorry, the Big Ten to find the right culture fit. You have a situation where you're going to have probably 3 or 4 maybe viable Big 12 teams that the Big Ten could add. But I think there's really only 2 that, if you want to include the AAU label, that they could go with. I think I know. Texas, Kansas, and Iowa State are the 3 Big 12 schools that hold that AAU label. Even Baylor and TCU, private institutions, by most accounts, pretty decent academic schools, do not hold that. So anyway, I'm going to jump in here. I've already kind of done that, but there's 4 expansion candidates really here for the Big Ten, I think, that have some level of viability without going on with some mega conference merge or really trying to reach out with really poor odds, I would say, for the ACC, barring just some major wacky conference alignment coming up in the near future. So let me start here, and these are the most obvious ones, but the 2 options out of the Big 12. The first one is Kansas. I think this is the most obvious option. I'm assuming this was the first thought for most people when you think of how other power conferences are going to try to pick off the rest of the schools that are available of those 8 remaining in the Big 12, with Texas and OU headed to the SEC. Kansas, yeah, they're a doormat for football. It's not a great look for the Big Ten to have Rutgers, to have Maryland, to have now Kansas. You're gonna have some of the worst P5, or I guess P4 maybe soon, seeing what happens with the Big 12. Is some of the worst P5 football at the bottom of your conference in the entire country. But you can make up for that, at least for Kansas, with basketball. They're going to come in right away, be a competitor with the likes of Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Maryland on a good year, among a number of other schools. Iowa was good recently. That it makes probably the Big Ten at this point what would be the second best basketball conference if the Big 12 does dissolve. And obviously you still have the ACC around. So, and I mean, they could challenge for the first. If you have Kansas, you had one of the 4 4 or 5 true blue bloods, depending on how you want to look at UCLA. So I like Kansas as an addition. Revenue wise, I believe they would fit somewhere into the middle of the pack in the Big 12, in the Big 10, especially if you take just generic athletic revenues into account. I think there's better markers to look at it than that. But yeah, so I think Kansas makes a lot of sense. Will probably be the first and most realistic call for the Big Ten. The second option, and I see a lot of people just saying it doesn't really move the needle for them, and I get it. Iowa State's the next one. Iowa State doesn't move the needle for a whole lot of people if you don't include the recent success of the football program. Viability of Iowa State on a good year between basketball and how they've been doing recently for football. I mean, it's a very, very competitive school. You don't have a whole lot in terms of athletics outside of those 2 for Iowa State. But you do have a sizable fan base. You have the Cy-Hawk rivalry with Iowa. I think it makes a lot of sense. They fit in naturally Big Ten West. They are a AAU school. Like I said, the geographic connections there. If Matt Campbell's going to stay there for a long time, then you have, at the moment, one of the best football schools in the conference. I mean, historically, no, but I think that's a good fit there. If you're looking to bring the Big Ten to 16 schools, Kansas and Iowa State is the logical package deal right now. if you're trying to kind of keep a hold of that AAU label. So those two are going to be my two obvious ones. These two last ones, one's a real long shot, but one that the Big Ten should always call. And then the other is, I think, actually more of a low key, but like if you're going to pull a school for another P5 conference, I think that this one's doable. Anyway, the first one's Notre Dame. Notre Dame, yeah, if there's a conference that they're going to go to, it's probably going to be the ACC. But there are advantages that the Big Ten offers over the ACC. And I know Notre Dame's not an AAU school, but they're a much better academic institution than some of the other schools in the AAU. I think the Big Ten would be willing to look outside of that. Nebraska, I think right now is the only school in the Big Ten that doesn't have that AAU label, but they had that when they entered the Big Ten. And I mean, football success historically, I think Nebraska's had a dip in their reputation since they first joined the Big Ten, just in the sense of what the Big Ten usually looks for, just in modern football success. That academic label. So Notre Dame's an obvious ad here. If they're willing to say yes, I mean, I think the Big Ten would immediately take them. The big fish out there, if you're looking to make a big splash in terms of revenue or just brand name, kind of like Oklahoma and Texas have with the SEC, there's not any better than you're going to do than Notre Dame. I mean, some of these, like Kansas basketball is big, and this is going to be a world of big splashes. Kansas basketball is big for a conference like the Pac-12 or maybe even the ACC. Baylor basketball is a big splash right now, but you're not going to get anything as well-rounded or that brand name, that blue blood kind of mentality. Kind of that blue blood type prestige as Notre Dame. Notre Dame would come in, be a nice fit right away. Another blue blood to a mix that already includes Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. It's be a logical ad if they'd be willing to do so. You'd have to offer something, I think, pretty solid. That one's pretty straightforward. Again, I think that would I honestly think that Notre Dame's not going to join a conference still in this round of conference realignment. I think they're going to stand pat. But if they joined a conference, I think there's only two that they would think about. Geographically makes sense with the Big Ten. I think academically, just again, that quote unquote culture fit, it makes sense too. But and they have a few schools in their own state that are already in the Big Ten. So I just think if they were to join with the ACC would probably be their first choice. Moving into the at least for football, I know they play in the ACC for other sports. The last choice here, I would go with Pitt. Okay, I know there are a plethora of options out there. There's going to be some options that sound much better than Pitt. I think that geographically, if you are able to get Pitt into the Big Ten, then if they can keep up some respectable level of football success, I think you have an in-state rivalry there with Penn State. That's something to work off of. Pitt, historically and of late, has been a pretty decent basketball program. They're a good academic school. In the Big Ten East, you don't have the most formidable athletic schools, especially among the newer additions. If you're looking to expand, Pitt, I mean, at least compared to like a Rutgers or even a Maryland in a lot of sports, football, namely, I guess, of late, both of them have been kind of so-so, but I think they don't lower the bar. But again, if you're looking to bring in another school that's already P5, it's got a good academic reputation, you can at least hold their own okay in football and basketball. It can be a tournament contender in basketball, so you get that. You'd get a decent addition. I think if you were looking to expand with 2 to 4 teams, Pitt should be on the list of teams to call because the geographic relevance is there. You have the academic brand name. They're part of the AAU. And I think that you could get them away from the ACC. I think there's a situation where a school's willing to leave the ACC if there's an appealing enough offer on the table. And then the ACC might not try to put up too big of a fight to let go of a school like Pitt when in this round of conference realignment, the ACC can go out and get a West Virginia at this point, the ACC could go out and get half at least of the teams from the Big 12. West Virginia makes the most sense, but you even got other attractive ACC expansion out there. This is a pretty crazy time. So I think that Pitt is certainly a viability for the Big Ten. After Pitt, you're looking at schools, I think, like UVA, Virginia. You're kind of moving down into Virginia and the Carolinas. And that's going to be less realistic. I think those are going to be schools that the ACC is going to put more of a fight up, and I think they would be more encouraged to stay in the ACC. I know you got Maryland, but getting someone like a Virginia or UNC would be a lot harder. So I like those 4 schools for the Big Ten to make their priority, unless you're really looking for something huge here and going for a super conference merger, or you really feel like you can pick off a group of 2 or 4 schools from the ACC, which again is just a pretty unrealistic notion. So granted, who knows what's realistic right now? It's a crazy time. So those are my 4 schools. I think the first call is Kansas. I think the second call, if you want to package them together, is Iowa State, if you're looking to add 2 schools out of the Big 12 to bring you up to 16. The point here is to talk about 4 super conferences, because I'll talk about I'll kind of talk about the SEC and how I feel like that fits together, just because as far as the SEC goes, I mean, obviously you're probably not looking to expand any further. I don't think you'll be looking to take on like 2 more schools from the Big 12. I just don't think that would make a whole lot of sense. I think that the Pac-12 has any number of possibilities here. They could just stand pat and see how it goes. Try to see if just hanging on to the status quo will end up working for them. I know they got a new conference commissioner. Maybe that helps spark some more success. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of possibilities out there. I already talked about my list of expansion teams possibly for the Big 12. Sorry, guys, I'm pretty tired. But plenty to talk about here, and I will continue to do so in the coming days, maybe the coming weeks, because this is, I guess, kind of becoming about a once in a decade sort of happening in college sports, college football specifically, as far as the ramifications go. But anyway, that is pretty much it. See ya.